Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and today we're going to be working on the Sweetheart Roadster project again. We've been hitting this thing pretty hard this winter. I have a goal for 2023 to make big improvements or steps upon this car and get it a lot closer to being either done or ready for body work. We don't quite know, but this car is going to transform quite a lot this year, and we're trying to get it closer to the finish line, if not done. We'll see. So I got sort of sidetracked in the last video. I found those taillights. I've been trying to decide what I was doing with taillights on the car for a long time. Found those 58 Chevy taillights. In my head, everything clicked, and that was it, and I just jumped right in and did that project. So while it was a sidetrack thing, it's something that definitely needed to be done. If you didn't check it out, definitely watch that video. I Frenched in some lights. I think it looks pretty cool. We added a louver deck lid, etc., etc. So it was a fun little fabrication video. So now we're back on track with some of the work we've been talking about doing. So when I first started this car, I basically didn't have nearly as many parts as I do now. I mean, I started this car 7, 8, 9 years ago. I don't even remember now. It's been a while that I've been gathering parts for this car, and I got the Cadillac engine first before I even had a body, and then eventually at Hershey one year, I was looking for a transmission. I did not want a 39 Ford Trans. I wanted something a little better. I wanted a 37 Lasalle, but at the time I just couldn't afford one or find one. So what I ended up finding was a adapter plate with a Studebaker truck transmission on it that was out of an old either hot rodded Studebaker or who knows what, or an early Ford, I'm not sure. But I bought it because it was in my price range. I fitted up to the car. I made a trans mount, or earlier videos of this car, I was moving forward with that. As things have progressed over the years, I've gotten a bunch of Lasalle transmissions. It's what I've really wanted for the car. And also the gear ratio on the Studebaker truck transmission is not very good. And I'm trying to make some of these cars that are my keeper cars, so to speak, be a little more uniform with what they have in them and what parts they need, so that if I ever need to do a repair or keep parts around extra for them, it's a little easier. So a bunch of the cars have Lasalles. Putting a Lasalle was what I wanted in the car, and it just kind of makes sense. So this is one of the last, if not the last, transmission that's out of the trunk of the DeLorean Roadster. So when I bought that car, you guys may remember, if you don't, it's pretty crazy in the video. The trunk was full of 37 Lasalle transmissions, or Lasalle transmissions in general. A bunch of them were transmissions that were already modified to have a Ford closed driveline. They cut the tail shaft, take the tail shaft off, cut the main shaft, and respline it, etc., etc. This is the last one that I have, I think, that's together at least. I have some other transmissions, but this one was together. The inside of it is basically like brand new. I think somebody rebuilt it. They just stored it away, and it was never really run after it was converted. So I threw some extra parts that was missing on it. Today we're gonna swap the Lasalle trans in place of the Studebaker trans and an adapter, and I'm gonna have to figure out either modifying my old trans mount or making a new one. I'm not quite sure. So we're gonna work on getting the parts together, getting this out, and getting another transmission in, which will help us make floor pans, etc., etc. So enough talking, I'm gonna get busy. All right, so Steve got the, we moved the cars around. Steve got the car up on the lift, the Roadster on the lift. Don't know if I've ever had this thing on the lift, to be honest. I was working on it on the ground, doing a lot of the stuff, and we're able to get underneath of it. So, for anybody that's been watching the channel for a long time, I built this art piece slash transmission mount. You can see it better there. I made all this webbing, and I welded it all together and grinded it and make it look like an old cast part. Pretty crazy. So that was our trans mount, or the cross member piece that holding the trans up. We're going to take that out. I'm hoping I can reuse that or repurpose it. You can see this little trans, I call it like a peanut trans. Its little thing is tiny, and it has the aluminum McBar adapter here. So we're going to take the whole mess out, and then we're going to bolt up the cast iron 50 old slash Cadillac stick shift bell housing and bolts there, and then we'll put the Lasalle in and see where it fits between. You can see that we still have the trans mount in from the car that this X member came out. So for now, I'm going to see where everything lands. Who knows, you might be able to just make a little adapter to jump over to that. I'm not sure yet, but we got to get this trans out. I figured it was easier on the lift. So unbolt a few things and use our trans jack to lift the back of the engine up and take her out.
you got, there you go. There you go.
Dang, it's got some weight to it, man. I'll
Yeah.
tell you what.
Yep, that's beefy. Ready?
Yep. Oh, we're loose.
Okay, the bolt's still in. You're
Go
good.
ahead. Go ahead. It's
Good?
Move that stand,
Yep.
please. I got it. Luckily the engine's, that's a mock-up block, it's got no crank or anything in it.
Feels like that trans might have some gears in it though, huh?
Yeah. It gets heavier as I get older. It's up here. So I got it on the dowel there.
All right.
There you go. See if I just get one in here. You can see the old one that has a couple holes that don't line up on
Yeah, on this side too,
Yeah.
by the bell house, by the clutch fork.
And the olds one, you could, the only difference really otherwise on the olds is it has mounts here for, has holes for motor mounts,
Oh, okay.
or trans mounts, right?
Mm-hmm. There we go. You got a couple in there.
All right, so we got the bell housing up. There's some small differences with 50 olds bell housings on a Caddy. There's some of the bowl holes are not used. You could see two that are down here. The other way you could tell a Caddy bell housing apart from an early olds stick shift to 50 olds is it has these bowl holes here for trans mounts. So a lot of that stuff you know may not use, but the bowl holes do still line up with the olds on the Caddy. This is just what I got laying around in the stash, so we're gonna use it. The spacing's all the same. I got this candlestick mounted in here, and I wanted to use this one for mock-up because it's got the clutch arm on it. So when we get further down the line, I at least have something to aim for mocking up some of our clutch stuff, even with our mock-up block here. So I'm gonna try and muscle this trans in, see if we can get that in, and then we'll be able to see what we need to make, but that's one part of the equation done.
Oh yeah, I tried to get it up onto the floorboard there.
Okay, now it can rest on something.
Yep. No, still too much of an angle.
Nope. We're gonna have to take that. Come on. Now we're stuck on something. Alright, I got it.
You got?
Yep. Alright, so now we need to figure out a way to hold the back of that engine up, and actually no, it's I think all of them are far enough out that you should be able to tap down on it with a bar in it.
You want me to try cutting it or try hitting it?
I would try cutting it because
Okay.
it doesn't look like, I see
Yeah.
it flexing at the cut.
Yep.
So it's like almost there. Maybe if I keep this bar in, it'll help keep some pressure to make it split.
Answered that question.
That's why I want to keep a little pressure.
Yep.
So you don't cut into the frame. It just cracked when it got paper thin.
Yep.
It just cracked. Watch out. Oh! I hope that was filming.
Oh, now we got it. There we go. Look at that. Falls right in now. Get that started.
No crank, so there's no support.
Yep. Yeah, it's the right one.
Is it?
Yep.
Dude. Right where the pedal mount is on that side. But
Oh, right.
if it wasn't for that,
Oh, that is freaking close, ain't it?
it would work.
Yeah, okay, I see. Well, it did drop the tail of the transmission down a bit too. It's pointing down a bit from the torque tube.
Yeah, we probably have to set the car on the ground and check our level of our engine.
Yeah, right, check the angle of it, yep.
Get the engine, the carbs basically level, check this to see if it's roughly at, where we want it. Really, the carbs need to be essentially level or close to it.
Right.
That's what this car wanted. It wanted a Lasalle. Everything's
Practically begging for it.
it just all kind of fits nicely. It's crazy.
3 degrees
Yep.
down in the back.
Yeah, so it needs to go up. Okay, if we get a jack, yeah, back needs to go up. So that's good.
Yep.
That's probably a little too downhill, I would say. Okay, we're at 3.6, 3.7. Go ahead and
Okay. Coming up.
3. Hold on, let it even out.
Yep.
2.6, 2.5. Okay,
Coming up.
it's looking a lot better. 2.3, 2.2. 1, 2. Nope, touching.
Yep.
1, 1. Hold on, leave it
Yep.
there a second. All right, so we got our engine mounted in place, threw the carbs back on. Basically, what we were fighting is the look of the engine, the degree it needed to be, and how everything jived together. So basically, with jacking the back of the engine up, we got it at the point now where it's literally, I don't know, 0.9 or 3/4 of a degree. I mean, that's 0.75 to 0.9, somewhere in there. It was sitting, and it's just about level, so it's pretty good. And we have the trans has come up to the point here where it has told us, like I always say in a lot of these videos, let the car speak to you. It's telling us that this stock center cross bar here for the sub rails needs to be cut, and I have to put a tunnel in it. So what I think I'm going to be able to do is just from here all the way forward to the trans, we're going to be able to just make a U-shaped tunnel. We can get rid of that, and there is enough clearance in the factory cross member there, brace if you will, in the X, that the torque tube can come up and everything should work just fine. So I wasn't trying to get the back end quite that high to have like almost no tunnel, but with the angle that the engine needs to sit at, that's what it had to be. And I'm really kind of being picky. I want the engine to sit height-wise. So step back, we could go down in the front a little bit, but it would change the look of the engine. I want the engine, it sits really nice and kind of centered in the firewall, and it fills up the engine bay, which is what I like. And if we drop it down real far, then it's it's going to start changing some of the look that I was going for. And you're going to start getting your oil pan really close to the ground. Right now the oil pan is just above the axle. We'd probably be getting close to level with the bottom of the axle, which isn't ideal. So, but yeah, looking cool. So that's sitting really awesome. So what I think I'm going to do is, Steve and I were just talking about, I think we're going to go ahead and just cut this center sub rail, or the crossbar and the sub rails. We're going to cut that right away, give me some space, and then we're going to take out that bracket. We bolted the bracket with the stock trans mount in. We're going to take that out and then just start moving things around and see if we can repurpose that bracket, or maybe just the mount and I make a bracket that goes under it. That's pretty simple. We don't really know yet, but we got to get that cut, and then we could start moving stuff around and see what is going to be the best solution. Okay, now we have space. All right, things are spiraling out of control. This has not been a good week for me. I've been redoing things and hating things and messing stuff up. So we realized that really the only way to make this work, even though in the last clip I was saying how I loved where the engine sat in the engine bay, the engine was sitting too high. Just with how everything needed to jive, it was not going to work. We would to get the angles right. So now we have the engine. We dropped the engine down. I don't know what, Steve, 2 inches? What's that?
2 inches.
Yeah, probably about 2 inches. So now I am taking my nice motor mounts that I made forever ago. And not only are we not using the part that I made forever ago for the trans mount, we're now taking my engine mounts and I just cut them in half. Super awesome. Great, 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 great. So I'm using my new bandsaw, which is great because it cuts nicely. But I am cutting a section out of this because we lowered it. And I'm going to hopefully still use these mounts, but take a bunch out of them. This is just very disappointing, but this is what happens when you build a car over 7 years and change your mind and change the transmission and change everything. We're back to here. So here we go. I'm going to cut these up and try and weld them back together, and then maybe we can make a trans mount. All right, so after our motor mount debacle, everything's sitting pretty good. The trans and the torque tube and all that stuff lines up pretty well. I'm happy with it. So here's what I'm at, where I'm at. I have some plates I made that basically use factory. These two are rivet holes from the original mount. These 2 holes are for the pedal cluster that were already there. And since Ford stamps the frames in this era for right-hand drive as well, that was all there. So I just reused them on this side, same pattern. I got my plates made, and you can see the gap that we have to fill here, and that's because we moved the motor mount forward in the X member, which gets wider the further it goes forward. So I'm basically, just to kind of make this easy to make everything fit, I'm going to make some 1/8 inch plate that matches the original mount bracket here, and bridge this gap, get it to fit real nice, and tack it on the sides, front and back, and that will give me everything located, and then I can make pieces for the top, weld it all together, blend it all in, it'll be good. I probably could make it out of one piece, but I think the time it would take to do that, and make that like C shape that it has, I could just weld it and bevel my weld seams and weld it, and then it'll look fine. So that's where we're at. I ended up having to relieve right here. The shop light's messing me up. I had to put a cut here and cut the webbing there and push this in so that on both sides we could get access to this bolt that's there. So that's why I did that, so it's gonna roll in a little bit more. So that's pretty good. I'm gonna get some pieces of plate cut and fit them in there and get it all tacked, and I could take it apart and weld it on the bench, which is much more preferable. All right, so after a bunch of welding, I went ahead and ground everything with a little mini belt sander and put it on the disc sander and rounded the edges, blah, blah, blah. I hit it with a DA sander, didn't get too crazy. It's not anything that's really gonna be seen. There's definitely still some spots with pits in the welds and thing that, you know, or where the seams were that I could go back over if we really were too concerned about it, but overall, this thing is pretty much welded and ready to go. So I'm gonna fit this back up, bolt it to the trans, tighten everything down, and we can finally let the car down, and it will have a Lasalle trans here in a few minutes. The rest of the world, not so much. It'd be nice not to have 18 ratchet straps holding everything together too. Yeah. Ooh, batteries just made it for me to tighten that all down. Now we can let all our ratchet straps go we got that's holding the thing in place. We're gonna put one to pull the trans just so it was lined up centered wise. So that's that one. And then we got this guy that's holding weight. Oh. Well, the engine and trans didn't fall out of the car, so I guess my welding passed for now. It passed the gravity test. All right, so I'll show you guys everything bolted up. I'm pretty psyched on this setup because it is very factory looking. So you can see where we have our plate, and I apologize to shop lights when we try and stand under the car pane. So this plate, you know, basically just reused 2 rivet holes and then 2 bolt holes that were for the brake pedal on both sides. And you can see that there. And he uses this X member I have in this car is out of like a 40 46 or 7 Ford, somewhere in that range, and that's the stock trans mount that was on it. So when we go to put this car back together, I can just order a reproduction trans mount, and that will go right back in. This one is good enough for now. It's actually not in terrible shape, but obviously when the car is all done, we want everything new. So, but yeah, everything goes in. That mount, you know, with 4 bolts on either side, could slide down out, and then we can take the trans out and service the car. It's something, again, I've mentioned in videos. I've been trying to get better at making things so when I do have to work at it, I don't work on the car or service it. I don't hate Matt from years ago when he built the car. So I'm gonna drop it down, put the shifter in, and see how everything looks with a Lasalle trans. Grill back on. Let's see. Now we definitely can run a hood top. The engine's dropped down. Tiny bit. If not, we got more. There you go. That might actually work pretty nice. All right, so got everything back in place and mocked our grill back up and the steering wheel and put a shifter on it, and everything is definitely jiving together. Much, much happier with how this all worked out. It was kind of a long, it took the long way to get there, but we got the engine and trans sitting where it needed to go. This is just something that over the years I'm trying to get better at. I definitely, having the channel and my ADD does not help with some of this stuff. So this is a good instance of, I was trying to get the engine in and get everything set, and where I thought the engine should sit, I didn't really have a torque tube bolted up, and it didn't really make trans mounts at the time, so I didn't really see that the engine was sitting too high. I liked how it looked in the engine bay, but it just was not going to work with the torque tube, the drive shaft, all that stuff. And that's why we had to end up sectioning. I think it was like, we probably dropped the engine like 2 inches or something like that. But everything, it's funny, as we were doing it, Steve and I were noticing, it's like, well, this is falling together, that's lining up, everything just looks just right. And it all worked out. So it could have been a lot worse. It could have hit the steering box and a lot of other things, and it would have had to redo a bunch of other stuff. So really all I had to do was just section those mounts, drop everything down. I made the trans cross member mount bolt in now. I think it looks really good, and it is like, it kind of looks factory or like something you could have bought, like a aftermarket part back in the day, and everything should slide together very nice. The rear torque tube does need to be adjusted a little bit. It's cocked just a hair, just because of the radius rods that I made underneath here. They have tie rods on them, and I probably just by eye years ago just adjusted them, threw them on. So we're going to be probably removing those, because I did them originally because I was planning on having an open drive, and then we've kind of switched gears over the years, and I made the decision to go closed drive with the Lasalle, and I'm going to end up changing those radius rods and putting them to the torque tube like they're supposed to be, and then we'll get everything adjusted there, and it should be no problem. But it's all kind of falling together, which is really cool. Another car has a Lasalle in it, so now if I break anything, I could just keep Lasalle parts around, or if we ever need to change a trans, it's pretty much all the same. We can just swap it around. So that's really good, and it's kind of like the iconic hot rod transmission that, back in the day everybody would talk about having 37 Lasalle transmissions. So that is also bonus nostalgia points. So thank you guys for following along. Let me know what you think of the trans mount and the new setup in the Sweetheart Roadster. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.